Okay, so we are on the road again, and the first time in the new jacket and helmet. I must say that 9 degrees are not a good idea with a mesh jacket. I wanted to check the audio of the new helmet and such. Today's topic is inspired by another vlogger. I believe the channel is Tall Guy Small Bike. I don't want to say too much about the video. I will link it at the end of this one, or you can check in the description. I want to talk about fighting in Japan. Hopefully you've watched the video on theft that I've put up, so you can imagine there isn't much violence going on here, and I've not seen like really big fights. If you see some kind of aggression, it's usually some kind of salary guy or another, practically like they are shoving each other, and I don't know, most of the time they're drunk, which is quite funny to watch it. It's really interesting, like it's in the train, it's either in the train or it's on the platform, and like time freezes, everybody slows down and stares at whoever is shouting the loudest, and then maybe they're shoving each other, each holding one bag which they're not even swinging. You can see these rows of seats on the side, and people are standing in the middle, and they are standing at the end, like in front of the doors. So if someone kind of leans against the seat, usually this kind of barrier is about hip high. If they are carrying a backpack or something, or leaning too far back, you kind of bump into the head of the first person sitting there. And I heard that at some train lines they actually put screens up that go all the way to the top, because there have been like fights. Someone sitting there trying to sleep and being hit by a backpack or whatever, and they start shouting at each other which is really hilarious to watch. Like in all these years that I've been living here, I've never been in a fight. I've never really been in a fight with a Japanese person or with another gaijin, I want to say. You can avoid fighting very easily, right? I mean, everybody knows you can just step away from a fight, but to actually swing fists, it's usually avoidable, I would say. So about a few weeks ago I was in the train, and I got onto the train, and you know, there are like the seats that I just explained, and someone like Oji-chan, some old grandpa, was sitting there, and there's a kind of metal pole sometimes. So he was sitting on one side of the pole, which means that pretty much anything on the other side of the pole is for the next person to sit. And that was like the only seat available. And he was leaning back very far, he had his elbows spread out, he had his hands in his shirt pocket or jacket pocket, the legs were almost straight, he was certainly asleep. And I believe he was drunk. He certainly smelled that way, let's leave it at that. So yeah, he was sleeping. I wanted to sit down, so what did I do? I sat down on the seat, and I was kind of leaning forward so that his elbow could kind of be behind my back. You know, usually if you do that, if you sit down like that, people either they wake up or they realize that that you've just sat down, if they are already awake, and then they kind of move. But he didn't. I think he was completely drunk, and he didn't. And I didn't care, and then I just shoved him. I kind of put my right arm, I turned around, put my right arm halfway under his elbow, and I just kind of gently shoved him over. So he had his hands in his pockets, he kind of took them out, moved over, and at first he was a bit grumpy, right, like, and he didn't say anything really. I think then he realized that I was a gaijin, that I was a foreigner, and then then the whole thing started, right? He thought he could bitch a bit louder, as in I should behave, and this wasn't my country, and I should just fuck off and leave him alone, and how dare I wake him up and crap like that, which I thought was actually kind of funny. He was kind of smallish, right? Like they are all here. I'm not trying to discriminate, but I'm not really small. He was bitching his head off. I couldn't understand everything. It was something like, you useless shit foreigner, what are you doing here, etc. What the fuck? I should behave myself. That was what I heard several times. I should like behave myself. The whole train ride is about 10-15 minutes, and he was talking the whole time. telling me that I should behave myself, this isn't my country. And I kind of answered him in English a few times. First, like, leave me alone, and he kind of got up. He was standing in front of me, and I have to say that I was wearing a mask. I'm gonna make a vlog on wearing masks and why, how, etc. and when. I had the hood on my jacket on, I was listening to music, I had my arms crossed, I was wearing a mask. I'm like 185 tall, 100 kilos, not the smallest guy in Japan probably, and I have this 60 kilo, 160 centimeters tall guy standing in front of me, waving his arms and telling me that I should fuck off and that I should like leave his country. I should behave myself, that wasn't my place or something like that. The train was pretty much full, right? I mean, nobody was sitting down next to him because he was having his elbows out and everybody else was kind of ignoring him. There were people standing in the train when I got on, so they probably saw what I did and what had happened. They were looking at him more than they were looking at me because I wasn't moving. I was like, nah, dude, I'm not gonna do anything. If you want to take a swing, take a swing. I'm gonna survive the first one. And after that, I don't know what's gonna happen. I was trying to be patient and to calm down and just let him rant, because that's what he did. He was ranting. At one point, he got the courage up. It was like after 5 minutes, because I closed my eyes, right? At some point I closed my eyes. I turned the music up in a way, like I took the phone out, that he could see I was turning the music up. Maybe he heard it over the headphones. And he was really angry that he was ignored. He did not like that at all. So at one point he started pulling on my sleeve, right? Like very carefully, just like kind of holding onto it and pulling a bit. And I didn't say anything, I just started to growl, like I was like, like that. And he was like, he let go of my sleeve right away. He was holding on like between elbow and wrist and like was kind of pulling because I had my arms crossed. He wanted me to wake up or open my eyes, or I don't know what it was exactly. I just growled at him and he let go. Stepped back like half a step. Got quieter, and I don't know, he was kind of re-evaluating the whole situation, and then he decided to just continue swearing. Throughout the whole thing, nobody looked really at me. They were looking at him because he was talking in the train, right? And people don't like that, especially so noisily. End of story, he just left. He seemed to have, he had to get off before I did, so he just left. Looked around twice if I was following, but he just left, and that was the end of it. So yeah, as a foreigner, what do you do in a country that isn't yours? I would suggest to be as passive as possible and not get in a fight, because you are still the fucking gaijin. There's another story about this topic. I'm not trying to say that I did the right thing and this guy didn't do the right thing. I mean, hear for yourself, think about it. But there was this guy, a foreigner, walking around in Shinjuku in the station underground, and he had his girl with him. She was Japanese. A drunk salary guy showed up and he was starting to, I don't know, insult him. Basically he said things to him like fucking gaijin. That was the thing I remember in the article that I read. It wasn't a newspaper, it was like an English magazine for foreigners living and traveling in Tokyo. And I believe the foreigner was carrying a beer bottle, and the salary man, as they like to call them here, completely drunk, probably walked up to him, started shoving in, and then, I don't know, fucking gaijin. At one point, I don't want to speculate too much. I don't know who hit whom first and why and where and how often. But anyway, at some point the foreigner punched the guy in the face, and I believe there was blood, and he also dropped his beer bottle. So the beer bottle broke. The guy was bleeding. The Japanese dude was bleeding. He fell on his ass, as far as I remember. And the foreigner and the girl, they took off. They were then found or caught or seen. Anyway, the foreigner was arrested. And he then went to prison. He wasn't prosecuted, but he was just like kept in a holding cell or in the cell. And It was in the newspaper and the magazine, it was in the news. Pretty much every foreigner was talking about it at that time. That was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. I was fairly new to Japan. And the funniest thing I thought was that it took them forever to find evidence and to release him. The story was that there was broken glass, there was a broken bottle, the Japanese guy was bleeding, didn't have a scratch on him. Of course he was a, I don't know, upright citizen, the Japanese dude, so they thought he was attacked by the foreigner. That was like the story. That's why they were holding him. Plus, they were saying that the foreigner had hit him with a beer bottle. That's why there was so much blood. That's why there was no scratch on the gaijin. So he was attacking the Japanese guy. And now I want to say, if you think about, I don't know about Germany exactly, but if you are assumed to have committed a crime and the police arrests you, there's a certain amount of time that they have to prosecute you or they have to let you go. And I don't know, from my Hollywood education in America, I would say that's 24 hours. Maybe that's 24 hours, 48 hours in Germany. And now think about it, how long is it in Japan? It is 20 fucking days. They kept him in prison for 20 days. And I know that he did a kind of podcast interview later, and he apparently lost a lot of weight, and he paid a lot of money for like legal fees, and at the end he was released. The joke was that they released him because the whole thing was filmed. He was like underground subway station around Shinjuku station, or a part that belongs to Shinjuku station, and the whole interaction with the guy was actually on camera. It took them 20 days to realize that they had filmed the whole fucking thing, and that he did not hit him with a beer bottle, and that he did not fight the guy, and that he did not attack the guy, right? Once again, Japanese guy walks up to a gaijin, starts shouting fucking foreigner, shoves him around a bit, gets smacked in the face, nose starts bleeding, beer bottle drops on the floor, gaijin and girlfriend run away. That was pretty much what had happened. I hope I got it right and I'm not telling lies here. Japanese guy on the floor bleeding a bit, police shows up, find the gaijin and hold him for 20 days. So yeah, I don't know. I have not taken a swing at anyone here. There's another story. My wife was in a convenience store, and you know, Japanese like to sit in the convenience store and read magazines without buying them. So they just sit there and or actually stand there and read them. And I was on my way home and I saw my wife. That she was in the convenience store, so I walked up and I kind of kissed her on the neck from behind. I said, "Hello, I'm a boo, I'm the stranger," or something. And some Japanese guy saw us, and he was, I don't know, he was kind of appalled. We walked home and he was on a bicycle. He kind of circled back twice, and he was like making gestures and things like that, right? Japanese don't show affection to each other in public. And that guy was kind of pissed off that I had kissed my girlfriend or wife at that time. I don't remember what it was. He was circling us with a bike. He came like twice, right? You know, I was walking on the street with her, like a side street, and he showed up twice. He passed us twice, just doing like kind of like vomit sounds or something, which I found quite funny. So at one point I was kind of like, "Come on, dude, you want to have a go?" I was screaming at him. Of course he wouldn't get off his bicycle. At one point I got so loud that he kind of left, and my wife just said to me, never, don't pick a fight, don't start any trouble here, it's not gonna work, it's not worth it. And oh, what's that? Let's park right next to him. It's a firestorm, whatever that means. Anyway, take care guys, till next time.